All right. So we're just going to get going here, and Jules will pop in when she is available to do so. This is roundtable number 6 of the Wolf Mothers Council of this season of the Wolf Mothers Council. And we actually wanted to take a slightly different turn this week because it is the Men's Mental Health Month. There she is. Let's get her in here. It is Men's Mental Health Month, so we definitely wanted to address this section of the matriarchy. Some of you might not think that it's connected, but it absolutely is. So this is where we're going to be headed in our conversation today. Hello, Jules. Welcome in.
Hello. If I can get my camera on.
So to just kind of give everyone a quick recap, whoever has been here before or not, this is for everybody. But we do not believe that women are supposed to be ruling over men. That's not what we mean when we say matriarchy. We also like to give this trigger warning in the beginning that we are probably going to say some things that are going to trigger you, make you feel uncomfortable. It might be something you've never heard before, or it might be something that hits somewhere deep inside of your own journey that you've been on. Either way, just understand that we are not here to argue. We are here to just ask good questions with each other. We believe here that men matter. We believe that boys matter, that children in general matter, fathers matter. So this is going to be a super important conversation today. We were actually going to be talking about something else completely different, but I feel like we've already kind of really honed in on that other idea. So today, this is kind of like the new fly by the seat of your pants conversation, which I really enjoy. I like these kind of conversations. So before we really get started, normally it's Shannon who kind of like gets us grounded and settled in. So I'm going to do that for us today, just for a few minutes here. If you are able to do so, go ahead and place your hand on your heart, close your eyes, take a deep breath with me. And just ground yourself into this moment right here, right now. Anything that we have planned later today, it can wait. Allow your mind to become clear enough to receive the information that we are presenting to you here today. And we just ask that the Great Spirit, the Great Mother, is here amongst us in this conversation today so that we can really start to understand fully what it is that we are all being called back to, I believe. So just take one more deep breath. All right. Feels good. All right. So, if patriarchy benefits men, why are so many men suffering? That's the main question today in our discussion. Why do men have such high suicide rates? I don't know what words I'm going to be able to get away with today, but why are more men likely to die from addiction? Why are men more likely to end up incarcerated? And why are they the most often the ones that are reluctant to seek the help? Jules, do you want to add anything so far while we let people sit with those questions?
Yeah, it's our last minute subject change day. And given it's Men's Mental Health Month, this is why we wanted to kind of direct the conversation in this way, because as someone who has worked in the grassroots of suicide prevention, I keep, do I need to say unaliving before
Let's
we
do
do we
that
have
just
to?
in case. Yeah, just in case.
I never know if that's like overblown or if that's something that like TikTok's actually gonna kick us off for.
I
Anyway,
really don't know. I think they pick and choose who they like.
so what we find in that realm, right, is that while women tend to attempt more often, men tend to complete more often at higher numbers because they go for means, methods that women choose slower methods that you can often intervene in. They can be saved from, taken to the hospital. Men tend to get right to the point when it comes to that, and it's a The CDC talks about how the cure for unaliving and depression and, down the thread of that, addiction, things like that, is human connection. But then the CDC doesn't know how to tell us how to create human connection. It's just like, yeah, that's the cure. And what I posit under this patriarchal system that has groomed men to exist in a certain way, in a certain energy, it's removing the tools that they have, the emotional tools, to reach out when they need help, and removing them from the village that would, under a matriarchal mindset, notice before they had to say anything, you know? And it's, I don't know, kind of a passion subject for me, mental health and all of that. And it just seems like the right time to talk about it in this context.
Yeah. Also, I think that give me one sec here. You know me, all my buttons here. I also think that it's so deeply connected that it's almost invisible because it's right there, blatant in our face at all times. This would explain the male loneliness epidemic, right? This would explain, not just in males but in all of us, the lack of close friendships these days. Men's difficulty expressing their emotions, because a lot of them were raised just by default alone, because they're a male, that they're not allowed to feel them, from the point of being just even a small child who falls on the playground and the parent comes up and says, "Stop crying." You know, we don't
Boys
do
don't
that.
cry.
You know,
Boys don't
yeah,
cry.
yeah. And also, this one I think is super important too for men, is the feeling valued primarily for what they provide. And that one's a tough one, and maybe later we'll get Tony's input on that as well. But it feels like that one is kind of a double-edged sword here, because yes, there is value in what men provide. In the natural order, if you will, it's meant to be that way. But this might be one of those aspects that, because of the patriarchy itself, they're also not receiving the accolades or the reward, even if it's just a verbal reward or a hug from your spouse or whatever, just to say thank you. And I'm not sure, because I don't know, I'm a woman, but I don't know if more of that is because of the programming, that they're not able to accept it when people do give it to them, or if it genuinely is, nobody's saying it. And it could be both. Two things can be true at once. How many men feel loved for who they are versus what they can produce is basically that question that I'm asking. Mm-hmm. And for men, and I'm wondering, Jules, I'll get your opinion on this too, but I'm almost curious if we want to go ahead and let Tony pop in early.
Yeah, I'm down.
If Tony's still in here and if he's interested, just leave a comment here and we'll get you in. But this is often the area in this conversation where things will either like really fall apart because people just don't know how to deal with it. They'll just walk away and just be like, well, good luck. I hope you figure that out. Or you get these small groups of people or individuals like Jules or like myself who genuinely care. We just don't have like a system in place yet to figure out how to help men in that way. Let me see. Do you want to add anything to that, Jules, real quick?
I saw a comment in here, and somebody said it's because they are angry and ego-driven. I don't think men are more angry or more ego-driven than women are. I think the patriarchy tells them that they have to fit into an ego-driven role, and they're trying to achieve that. Mm-hmm. And it's in the achievement process of that they get sideways. I think that's a lot of show that they feel compelled to put on. And then we put them in these boxes. I mean, especially women right now, we're all angry, which rightfully so. You know, we talk about the male loneliness epidemic, and, you know, there's thousands of stories of women talking about being on dating apps and this, that, and the other. But when we approach these subjects, it can feel really isolating to men at the same time, and a lot of it can come off sounding hateful and so on top of being probably the largest victims of patriarchy and the toxic side of that programming, then they're having all of this piled on top of them right now, and this is sort of lost, like they've lost their place in society, and they're struggling to find it, and it's all happening at the same time, and that often goes unacknowledged. It's a lot. It's a lot to dump on them. Not that I'm not asking for accountability. I mean, it's their job to step up to that, but sometimes the ways in which we move through these conversations can be more harmful than helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a really good point to make, because of the female rage, if you will, that's happening right now. A lot of women don't have the filter right now, and we can't be mad at them for that reason, because they were never taught it. But the same thing is true about the men to an extent. Because once you reach a certain age, once you reach a certain level, you recognize that what happened to you is not your fault, but it is your responsibility to fix it, right? And it falls on each of us individually. It doesn't matter whether you're a male or a female. I will say that the odds are stacked against one more than the other, yes, and that does matter. But we are responsible for our own actions and reactions, and that's it. That's it. We have no responsibility over how someone else acts, how they speak to you, what words they use, right? But what you do have control over is how are you receiving that information from that other person? Are you immediately getting defensive and thinking they're talking about you and blaming you, when in reality they're talking about a generalization of something? It's about that holding space, being able to hold space for the other person's experience without injecting yourself into it. It's kind of a little bunny trail there, but I think that's important to mention, because it goes both ways, right? So when you're getting faced in a situation with a man, kind of putting that pain or bleeding on the person who did not cut them, is the way I like to say it. How are we responding? Well, that dives deeper into what your triggers are, right? Where you still have unhealed issues or things that you're dealing with in your own life. That will be how you are ending up reacting to them. So I would say the core principle of all of this is, how can we get to our own roots of the triggers so that we can learn how to communicate better? Because I believe a big part of this, again, it goes back to that patriarchal conversation, is we were not taught this. It was never explained to us, the importance of the relationship, until it was gone, right? But the relationship is the most important thing at the end of the day in all of this. Because if you truly love your neighbor as you love yourself, then you're going to have compassion for their experience, for what they've gone through. And again, we're talking about males today, but this does go both ways. It's an incredibly nuanced thing. It's difficult for a lot of people to understand nuance, and I don't blame you for that either. But again, it goes back to personal responsibility. What are you willing and able to take total control over, which is yourself, because you can't control anything else. Yeah, nuance is my absolute favorite. Tony, you might have hopped out a second ago, but we were inviting you to come in early today if you wanted to discuss this conversation, because we are talking mostly about men and men's mental health and how the patriarchy has done a lot of damage in that as well. Oh, you're almost home. Okay, got it. So we'll get you in here once you get home. Go ahead.
Somebody in the comment section asked if we could define patriarchy and what it means to us.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to do that? Go ahead.
It's well, my brain just went blank. Like, how do you?
I know.
I didn't get enough sleep last night. Male-centered domination is not the right word, but a system that elevates men to be in decision making positions, centers men in the home, all the way down. It sort of started when we switched over to being an agriculture-based society, and suddenly we owned land, and people had to be concerned with who their heirs were and who things got passed down, who the land got passed down to. So that kind of started the patriarchy, because the man wanted to pass down the land to his oldest son, and so on. And so it's just been, I think, this constantly male-centered way of driving society. That's not like a clinical definition. I'm very well aware that I just stumbled through the hell out of that and needed more sleep last night, which is why I've got a Red Bull.
No, that's totally fine. And I'm glad that you did say that, because I am now going to do one of my favorite things, which is go directly to dictionary.com, so that no one has any type of like weird thing going on. Like, well, they didn't say that, so they must mean this. Nope, we're just going to read it straight from the website. Patriarchy. There's a few definitions. Number one, a form of social organization in which the father is the supreme authority in the family, clan, or tribe, and descent is reckoned in the male line, while the child belonging to the father's clan or tribe. Second one, a society, community, or country based on this social organization. So it's the actual thing itself. Number three, a social system in which power is held by men through cultural norms and customs that favor men and withhold opportunity from women. This is on dictionary.com, by the way.
Well done, dictionary.com.
Yeah. And number four, often the patriarchy, the men in power of a society. So that's a great way of really understanding the well-roundedness of what the patriarchy actually is. Number three, the third definition's my favorite personally, because it's the most clear of what's going on. And just to be fair, we're going to look up matriarchy and see what the dictionary itself has to say about that. There's only two definitions for the matriarchy. Number one, a family, society, community, or state governed by women. And number two, a form of social organization in which the mother is the head of the family and in which the descent is reckoned in the female line, the children belonging to the mother's clan, matriarchal system. Very cut and dry.
And the inevitable question, so is matriarchy the same definition with women in power, female-centered? No.
Correct. It's not. It is not at all. Something we explained in a previous roundtable is that the patriarchy is a triangle, right? Or even an upside down triangle. But the matriarchy is a circle. It's a circle. That means everyone is included inside of that. Where the patriarchy, what that means with the triangle is there's a male on top, or the masculine, if you will, the masculine principalities, however you want to describe it, that's on top of this pyramid, and everything else trickles down from them. It's very similar to like corporatism. I don't know. Capitalism. There's the word I'm looking for. Where one person, the 1%, they're the ones who get all the funds, all the money, all the fun, right? Like we can't even do anything because we don't even have the funds to go do things, but they are up, buying 3 yachts and all this. So it's very similar. That's a patriarchal form. Whereas the matriarchy is more of that circle, where the children are the focal point on the interior, because everyone at that point is understanding that we are raising the next generation, and everything we do today is going to have effects tomorrow. It's going to have effects 5 years from now, 10 years from now. We lost that in the patriarchy in this sense. We've lost it because none of the children matter. The children are actually like at the very bottom. Whereas, again, the matriarchal system, it's the males and the females all protecting the vulnerability, the potential of the youth that's coming up as well.
Yeah, the example that I like to use is, it's really just kind of bringing a woman's wisdom back to the table. So, for example, the men decide that they want to go to war. The women would have to okay that because they're the ones that are going to sacrifice their sons.
Right.
So if the women decide this is not an honorable thing to go to war over, this is not something I'm willing to sacrifice my son for, then in a matriarchal society, they would listen.
Yeah.
It's not that they don't have any say. It's deferring to our judgment more often than they do today. Really is what it boils down to.
Yeah. And I
Tony's
think
home now.
Hey Tony, can you send me an invite? How do I do I send you one or do you send me one? Yes, that's how a lot of the indigenous tribes still do it to this day, which is beautiful. If anything, I would say that would be probably our number one goal. If we all did decide to move towards matriarchy, we would absolutely have to bring them in on that, honor them, honor what they do, how they do it, how they've been doing it, and learn from them, which I think is beautiful. It's a beautiful kind of like, Aurora Borealis, the snake eating its tail, it's like it's all full circle. It's all come back again to honoring. That's what it is. All right, let me see here. Oh, I got you, Tony. Here we go. Yes, I believe it would also be much more peaceful globally because, again, like Jules was saying, when the women's opinion holds more value, we have other options. It's not just war or peace. It's let's figure out the third option. There's got to be another way to get through what we're getting through, what we're going through right now. And it doesn't have to look this way just because this is the way we've always done it. And what I've found to be true more often than not is that the women have a lot of really good ideas. They just aren't listened to more often than not about that. Sometimes, yes, obviously, but not all the time. Most of the time it's, sit down and shut up. The women or the men are talking, So welcome, Tony. Welcome to the conversation. We kind of bunny trailed a little bit, but today's conversation is really about the male perspective and the male side of the matriarchal discussion of how the males are also getting, really severely traumatized, beat up emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, just as much, if not more, than the women in a patriarchal system. So, I'm going to let you just start talking if you want. Go for it. What are your first opinions on that?
Thanks for having me. As always, it's great to see both of you and to glean some of that wisdom out of your noggins. I knew you were going to give me the big window. God damn it. The current system benefits a certain persona. And even when you see very successful, like Fortune 500 women, oftentimes they're embodying a lot of elements of that type of persona. And it kind of beats it into you, hustle, work hard, be better, be dominant, own the room. I'm sure there are positives to that. I know people in the hustle culture, corporate world, and there are benefits, and that's why it works, because it's enticing. Mm-hmm. There are prizes at the end of that game. The only problem is that it requires you to step on or over people who are not capable of embodying that lifestyle, that persona, and that mentality. And as a man who has gone through that ringer and been in business mastermind groups, chambers of commerce, boardrooms, civic engagements, elections, and blah, 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 blah. If you can't function in that world, it will bleed your soul. Mm-hmm. It will make you exist in this space where nothing you do is good enough. And it makes you feel spiritually homeless, like I have no place in this world. And so I totally agree that the current dynamic is extremely unhealthy. And I'll say that after going through the darkest mental health crisis of my life over the last couple years, I'm currently speaking with a woman now who genuinely believes in me. And no matter like what I might say about my negativity, about my previous failures, whenever I speak about my dreams and my hope for tomorrow, she's right there to support me in a way that my homeboys never could. The supportive power of a woman is unrivaled, and it cannot be overstated, that it puts a wind in my sails that I can't get anywhere else. And I'm a lone wolf. I'm an only child. I'm like, I can do this on my own, but I can't. Not that. There's a nourishment to the soul that her belief in me gives me that I could not find anywhere else in this life. And the wisdom that she gives me and the way that she demonstrates that support of me, it lets me know that it's authentic and it feels ancient. It feels deeper than her or me or this current moment in time. It feels old. It feels like a time-honored thing. The wisdom of a woman and the support of a woman has put a wind in my sails that I haven't felt in a long, long time. The earliest memories of that feeling are from my mom. You know, when she says, you're handsome and you're so talented and you can do this and and all that like support that mom gave me, it was like enough to put wind in my sails for decades to come. And so I would say that the counsel of women is sorely needed in this society. And I'll land it with my usual sales pitch, which is, if it truly is the remedy to the poison that we face in this society, we got to prove it. And the best way to prove it is in community, belly to belly, face to face, with your neighbors, with people you may not agree with, people who may not look like you or believe the same things you do. But like that nourishment, that spiritual food that only a woman, in my opinion, can provide, the best way to experience it is right there. You have to show people. This isn't a theory debate. And as much stats and data as we may be able to throw at this conversation, none of it actually matters unless you feel it. And that's where it all happens, is right down the street from you. It doesn't happen in some faraway place by elected people or shareholders or boardrooms or university initiatives, or like, it doesn't happen in those places. It happens right where you are. That's where people will believe the things that we're speaking about here, is when they feel it. And they probably won't even have words for it when they do feel it. They'll struggle to find the vocabulary to describe the way that it feels to have the counsel of a woman who supports you.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you, something that you said in there. First of all, congratulations on that, by the way. Go Tony. But you talked about how we're just kind of having this conversation in the context of like men's mental health and what's the society has done to their mental health. And I think you touched on that a little bit somewhere in there, because you were talking about how this woman supports you in a way that your boys can't. What is it that you think keeps men from being able to support each other that way? Because on the other side of the fence, while I love the way that you talked about her, there's also sometimes a frustration on the woman's side that we end up becoming like emotional rehabs for men because they can't get that anywhere else. So what do you think gets in the way of that?
I'll say that it's twofold, because I think if she were here now, she would say that I provide a masculine energy that she's never experienced before. I listen, I care, I try to pay attention to the details so that I can surprise her with my remembrance of them later. And probably a myriad of things that I'm not even aware of. So I do think that in the right context, it is both. And if I was just taking like a parasitic relationship, I think that would be the best way to describe what you're talking about. This emotional rehab that a lot of women feel. That's not a relationship. That's a parasitic. That's parasitic. If you're not getting anything in return, then yes, you are giving that divine food for the soul that, again, I believe that only a woman can provide. And if you're not getting anything in return, then we're not talking about a healthy relationship anyway, because in the right context, you should be getting something from him that your homegirls can't give you. That may be the only, that if you got it from the right place, that maybe only your father or an uncle or older brother or some healthy male role model was able to give to you, that only a male, I think, could do, or somebody who can really truly embody those principles.
Yeah, and I think that it's natural too. Like it completely feels natural when it's meant to be that way, right? Like a woman doesn't feel like she's obligated to give compliments when she feels like it's being returned, when she feels like it's a balanced situation. I think, and it's the same probably for men as well, right? Like you love to support the woman. You love to like doll her up in whatever she wants, right? But when you also are not feeling like it's being reciprocated, then it starts to feel unnatural. It's only when both parties are fully in their awareness, honestly, to be a part of that situation, that relationship. That's when it starts to feel natural. And I love mentioning that because I feel like a lot of women have thought about this in that like romantic way that we've been taught, right? In the storybook way. Well, all I have to do is just look pretty and the man will just come find me and he'll just do whatever he wants and then, for me, and then I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. No, like I think that we've lost the plot when it comes to relationships. It's not what can I get from this person, it's what can I give. That's what your question needs to be from the very beginning, because if your question is what can I give, then naturally she's going to start giving back to you everything that you need as well. It's really got to be this selfless act when you go into a relationship, not a selfish act, if that makes sense.
I just saw my buddy Cannon in the comment section. Cannon, would you want to jump up and talk with us too?
We'll wait for them to respond back to that, but and we can come back too if we need to. Oh, here we go.
Some good stuff in the comment section.
Here we go. Oop, there we go. Hello, welcome to the chat.
Hello.
What's up?
I'm trying to I do not do lives very often. So there we go. There we go. Okay. I think, I gotta look pretty before.
We'll
Okay,
give you a minute. Oh, there we go.
Man, you're having a much better hair day than I could ever have. Damn, you go.
So it was back in a clip and it looked rough, so I had to put it down. So yeah, I really like this conversation and something I've been talking on my page recently about what I've been calling late stage patriarchy. And so it's very much like late stage capitalism where the whole purpose is profit at all costs. And in patriarchy, I think the whole purpose is maintaining these hierarchies, at all costs. And so we've kind of lost like, why are we doing this? But we're just doing it because it's there. And so in kind of going back to y'all's conversation, I think one of the problems is that patriarchy is so focused because patriarchy is inherently punitive. And so it's so focused on destruction and violence that we don't know what else to do. And so even when I see conversations about embracing matriarchy, people will ask like, well, what do men do? What is their purpose and their point? And a lot of times they'll talk about things like, well, it's about protection. And we have a hard time coming up with ideas for men, what their purpose is that doesn't involve violence and destruction. Because even that protection is still about violence. It's still about like when they're called to it, they'll be willing to do violence. And I just think like it's kind of an easy switch to focus on creation. No, it's about building, it's about creating. And so that's kind of the same idea with a relationship where you said, don't think about the first question shouldn't be what can I get out of it, but what should I give? But I would say too, like, what can we build? Like, what are we building together? And how are we collaborating to create something? And I just think like that is a big step in our society is seeing the value in creation, like valuing creation over that destruction and violence.
I love that. From my witchy perspective, I've always said that when you get into a relationship, you create a third spirit that you should put on your altar, and you have to feed that spirit, or it doesn't blossom, it doesn't grow, right? And I don't think that's something that we think enough about.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that you mentioned creation too, because that actually ties into this next little section we wanted to talk about is how do we raise boys in community? How do we do that? What role should the elders play? What role should the mentors play in these boys' lives? And what happens when boys are raised primarily by institutions instead of community? That's what we're seeing happen right now under the patriarchy. We've lost the community, as we've all mentioned, and it's become more of this institutionalized mindset, even of A plus B equals C, and this is how we get it done. The well-oiled machine is just going to keep rolling this way. But what I see happening, that should be happening more, I believe, is people creating subcultures, sub-communities. If you live in a small town, you're the one that's starting a group for young men who are trying to, find out who they are as they grow into the older versions of themselves. We need the men to be creating these atmospheres. This is something that I believe truly only men can do for boys, right? It's not, I can't as a woman speak to boys becoming men the same way that a man who's already a man can speak to those boys. But the same is true as well for women. Men cannot go into that space where the women are, right? Like we're the ones who teach our little girls how to become women. And in that sense, there's a huge nugget of gold that's there for men if they were willing and able to notice it, to recognize it, right? Like what an incredible responsibility to have as a grown man to say, I can do this. I can start a group. I can do this. I can help the next generation. Even if you don't have kids yourself, you can do that. Everyone has the ability to do that, men or women, right? Anything you guys want to add to that? Go ahead, Tony.
You're muted.
I love all this. Okay, I started scribbling down frantically because you know me, I can go on tangents and I want to keep this focused. Community care is replaced by institutions because we're lazy. And institutions create a formalized system that just gets it done, get the kids raised, get them ready for commerce, essentially, and labor. And individual care is what's necessary. This is why, when I chose to send my daughter to Montessori school this year instead of the public school that she had been going to, that individual care is the difference.
Right.
I went to a private Catholic school. Now, am I practicing Catholic today? Hell no. But I will say that the individualized attention that we got put us at minimum a year ahead of the high school students when, because my school went to 8th grade. So then 9th grade, we integrated with the public school kids. And at minimum, we were a year ahead of them. Mm-hmm. Same curriculum and everything, but individualized care. So then you say, Cannon had mentioned men being sort of groomed for violence under the veil of security and protection. And I think in some aspects, there are those of us that are called to the warrior path, the defender path, because we as a people don't get to choose when we're called to violence. Sometimes it arrives at our doorstep. And I won't sit here and say that that's only men's job, because I was a skinny, scrawny kid my whole life. I got made fun of on the farm. Every time I tried to throw a hay bale or a straw bale, the thick potato-fed farm boys would be like, wow, look at him struggling over there. Maybe do some more curls with your Game Boy, nerd. You know what I mean? And so not all of us are called to be brick houses, because sometimes brick houses are needed. Sometimes there are females that I grew up with, some who oftentimes were on farms who could have whooped my ass, probably still can whoop my ass. It's just not what I was called for. But how do we identify that? Teachers, peer groups, adult friend groups, community, and tribe. We identify the kid's strong suit and we help them achieve that. That's exactly what most of us sensible people are asking for in early education. Don't formalize it so much. Don't institutionalize it lazily and just expect everyone to fit a mold. We've seen how that works out. That creates great factory workers and soldiers, but it doesn't necessarily breed any sort of egalitarian society. So we need individualized, specialized care, which again, it brings us back to community. It takes us back to initiative and proving to the community around us that these ideas are valid. Otherwise, they just live in university textbooks, Substack articles, TikTok lives, and, joint fueled conversations.
Yeah.
And I'm cool with joint fueled conversations, joint fueled. Those are my favorite conversations, preferably 2 joints first, right? But like, at the end of the day, in order for these ideas to come to life, we just have to show people, because where I land my plane is every single person in these alternative social and political spaces is saying, not this system, not this one. And then people say, okay, then what? And they're like, well, I got this. You need to read this book, and you need to read this book, and you need to read this book. And it's like, no. Where is this happening? Show me the money, show me the community, show me the systems that work. And then I'll decide for myself if these are the systems for me. But oftentimes these things live in theory. And I think they stay in theory because we overcomplicate them. So my job, I think, in this conversation is to remind everybody not to be lazy. When you institutionalize it, you're being lazy because you just want to formalize a system which abandons individual care inherently, to systematize it and turn it into a number, turn it into a reliable process with dependable results. And in some situations that might be good for certain things. But when it comes to raising the next generation of our society, I do not think that should be institutionalized. Everybody requires an individualized attention and care. And that doesn't just come from parents, but it comes from, again, peer groups and teachers and coaches and instructors and so on and so on and so on and so on. And if we disengage with that level of community, then who's there to do it? Who's going to design the next 2 decades of life? Sam Altman? Peter Thiel? Sick. Can't wait for a future that's driven by people who are fascinated by Lucifer and don't think that human beings should continue. So if we don't stand up and do it, if we don't pave the way for homeschooling networks, after school programs, summer camps, start our own nonprofits, foundations, groups, run for positions and be in school board, be a helper at the school, volunteer for the trips or whatever. If we don't do that, regardless of how little time we have left after work and after taking care of ourselves and our families and children, it's a lot to ask. But if we don't do it, then Sam Altman and Peter Thiel get to decide the next 2 decades of what happens here. Not just the United States, but I would say largely on Earth. And that, if we want to prove the efficacy and the validity of matriarchal systems of decentralized power, decentralized finance, all these fancy alternative system conversation buzzwords and vocabulary words, if we want that, we just have to go play with that magic. Because nobody's got the system. Nobody's got the magic button. Not a single person I've ever talked to in any of these circles, right, left, middle, or outside, has the way. And that proves to me that there isn't one. There is just your way with who you're around and what you have and what you're willing to do with your extra time. Otherwise, it gets institutionalized. And then you get guys like me, if it was the year 18 something, they'd sign my ass up for World War I. You want me in the trenches? What do you mean? I'm the last motherfucker that should be in the trenches. What are you talking about? I'm not built for that shit. But somebody else is, right? And that's what happens is we need individualized attention and care to help design our life paths to live the best version of ourselves. That's how we hit egalitarian societies. Now I'll shut up.
Well, it's like that meme, right? Where the astronauts has the pew pew to the back of the head of the other one. He's like, oh, fill in the blank. And then the other guy's like, it's you. It's always been you. The answer is you. It's you. I'm going to say it one more time. It's you. It's you. No one else will create the vision that Spirit has given you but you. At least in the way that you were meant to do it. I will say this though, Spirit is a creative muse that flies in the atmosphere for anyone to reach up and grab. And if you don't grab it, someone else will. Then you have to live with the guilt of knowing that whatever just blew up could have been yours, but it's not because you didn't do the work. And I say all this in complete love, right? Because it's us. It's all of us. Choosing individually to care. That's it. At the end of the day, just care. care about your neighbor, care about the drama that's happening at your child's school that's affecting your child, care about, whatever, just care, choose to care. It's important. All right, so here's a good question. Now that I have two guys on the panel, I want you guys to answer me this. What do you guys think the difference is between strength and stoicism?
Oh, interesting.
Cannon, I'll let you start.
Okay. That wasn't what, like, was not expecting that question at all, but yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think strength is being able to admit that you're wounded, being able to admit that things bother you, um, and still be able to deal with it, be able to like work through it and process it rather than externalize it and blame people. Whereas stoicism is just pretending nothing's happening. It's just it's a mask. It's masking. And so people, I have ADHD, and so masking has been part of my life, forever. And it can be exhausting. It's exhausting. And so that stoicism is the same thing. While strength is, actually being able to be honest while still like holding that power. And so so to kind of tie this a little bit into what you asked before about how do we create these systems, how do we train this next generation, you know so one of the things, like, one thing that we don't talk about a lot is, in order to break down patriarchy, there's two sides of it. Like, there's that personal journey that men and women need to go through, but because, there are, like, women uphold the patriarchy at times too. And so there is that journey that both men and women need to go on. Women are going on it much more often than
Rapidly.
men right now. But and so as a man, I have to go through that personal journey on my own. But then there's also the system that we're part of, and we have to work on breaking down that system. And the first step is part of the second step, but they're both needed if we want to move to this matriarchal system. And I think the reason a lot of men don't, like, do what you were talking about, they don't create these spaces to help train other men, is because they're stoic instead of strong. But because what they have to do is they have to bring in these younger men who might disagree with them, who might push back against them, and they have to be able to withstand that. They have to be able to deal with that. And so I'm an English professor at a community college, and I mostly teach developmental. And so one of my strategies, one of the part of my teaching pedagogy, is I really try to break down the barriers in the class, and I really try to express to the students that I'm on the journey with them, and that we're in this together. I'm not at the top of the mountain yelling at them, to get up there. And so I try to make this very collaborative, helpful, community. And part of doing that is I tell a lot of embarrassing stories about myself. I have plenty about my dating life that they're just horrified by, and so I do this to break those barriers down, to get us on an even playing field. And when I get these kind of, like, super mad, it's mostly athletes. Like, a lot of times I'll get an athlete in my class that they do not like that. They do not like the way I'm breaking down the barriers. They do not like that I stop them from speaking if they keep interrupting the women in the class. I've had so many male students, like, come to me and they feel like they're being really helpful, and they're like, "You shouldn't make jokes about yourself like that." And I'm like, "Well, it's self-deprecating humor. Like it's like, that's the whole point of it." And they're like, "No, man, you got to stand strong. Like, that doesn't, like, you don't understand what you're doing." I was like, "No, I understand what I'm doing. Like,
Right.
you just don't like it." And so I think stoicism can't interact with that. Stoicism just has to pretend like none of it's happening, and this is the way. And I think that turns it into a different form of patriarchy. But because it's still about, I'm doing it the best way, you need to follow me. And so strength allows me, and it doesn't work all the time. but strength allows me to be able to interact with that, accept that rejection, acknowledge, that there's part of me that's bothered by it, that I want to reach them like these other students. But since my focus is the majority of the class, I'm not focused on making sure these athletes, can keep playing. I'm focused on making sure the majority of the class is able to get the most benefit. I have to just keep working through that. And so I think that's kind of the difference there for me.
Yeah. And I would say that strength, even the self-deprecating jokes, is strength as well, that a lot of people don't recognize, right? Because you're strong enough within yourself to say, here's something I did that was kind of wacky,
Yeah.
And that's good. That is strength. I think as well. I don't want to step on Tony's answer, so I'll stop there and we'll let him answer that question if he wants first. But yeah, I did want to point that out because I do that a lot as well. I believe there's so much power in being able to, I guess I should do this. Sorry. There's so much power in being able to look at your own perspective, your own life journey, and pick it apart, right? To be able to say, I shouldn't have done that. I really shouldn't have done that. But now I know. And now I know that I can tell this story to other people who are facing the same thing, seeing me on the other side of it. It is so powerful. So powerful. I was actually telling Jules about this yesterday. I'm going to be speaking at a Mary Magdalene conference coming up in like mid-July. And part of my session that I'm doing, a huge part of that is sharing what I would call my testimony of how I kind of left the church and how I found the true faith, the true definition for me of spirituality. And there's a lot of things in there that I literally have not talked about in years. But I felt the strength rising up within me to say, I don't care about me, about my ego, about how I look in this conversation. It's about what can you pull and extract out of my story that's going to help you. That's what's most important. So I love that you mentioned that in particular. That was my bunny trail. Go ahead, Tony.
All right. So a couple things. Stoicism to me, if we're not talking about the philosophical writings, Marcus Aurelius, and we're more talking about the outward appearance of being stoic, then we're talking about the masks that we wear, obviously. And I do love, Cannon, how you're talking about humanizing yourself to the students. I do that with my daughter. I never want her to feel like I'm lording over her, that I'm using my parental status as some sort of supreme leader. Never been a fan of Emperor Palpatine. Not about to start now. So I do think that it's good to humanize, but also there are times if the money's tight and I'm worried about it, there is an element of stoicism that I think it's time and place. I don't think that calling yourself a stoic person and treating that as some sort of character trait that needs to be revered because you're that way all the time. Well, then we can obviously see they're suppressing a lot of their inner self in order to achieve that. And I don't think that's healthy. That's masking to cope with your inability to process emotions. However, I think that having a poker face or being stoic in high pressure situations in leadership roles, I think is good. I think a lot of times people look to leadership for comfort in stressful situations. If the ship's on fire and the captain's like, oh, fuck, what are we going to fucking do? Everyone's like, we're done. We're done. The captain's freaking out. We are cooked. Right. But if the captain is like, we've got the lifeboats, we have protocol for this. And even if on the inside, they're like, oh, fuck, oh, fuck, oh, fuck, oh, fuck, oh, fuck. There are times when having that poker face is good. And I think oftentimes it's in leadership roles. But I don't think that it's a character trait that we need to embody all the time. And no matter what's happening, even if at my own mother and father's funeral, I refuse to cry. Well, that's not something I think to be revered. I think you should probably talk to somebody about that, homeboy. But I think both of these things, but okay, so then let me talk about strength. Strength, to me, it leads to self-awareness. If we're not just talking about physicality, physical strength, the ability to move heavy objects, then what we're really talking about is the ability to do things that you don't want to do because you know you need to do them. That's essentially what it boils down to, is discipline. And I think in order to understand this idea of being stoic, and when there's a time and a place to utilize these masks that we can wear in social situations to bring comfort to people who might be looking to the leadership for that, I think that all takes a degree of self-awareness. And I think that humility that we were talking about, making jokes about yourself, humanizing yourself to people, that takes a high degree of self-awareness. And I think that is strength, because then you're the type of person who knows, I should be stoic right now. I probably shouldn't panic. I should keep calm and be reassuring right now. And I may have my own council of people I can talk about my inner feelings with later, but maybe this particular time, this particular audience, this particular company I'm keeping would be better served if I was stoic, if I kept my poker face on. That takes self-awareness. That is strength, if that makes sense. And so I don't put them in some sort of duality. I don't see them, it's like stoicism or strength. Like, what's the difference? I think one leads to the other. I think stoicism is a tool that we mask ourselves with in social situations, and it can be useful. But again, I wouldn't want someone to ascribe that to themselves all the time, everywhere, regardless of the situation. That just looks like emotional suppression to me, and that's unhealthy. But I see strength as discipline, and I see it as the ability to do uncomfortable things that you don't want to do, but they need to be done. That's strength. If we're not talking about, kilograms and pounds and gains and protein supplements and shit like that. If we're not talking about that kind of strength, then yeah, strength to me is discipline.
Well, and therein lies the greatest example of nuance that we love so much, right? Like, it can be both. It can be both, but it is a matter of finding that balance of, where is this too much stoicism? Where is this not enough? Where am I projecting like I'm too, I have all the strength in the world, and where am I not? It's really about weighing those options as you go. Jules, did you have an opinion on that question you wanted to add?
Yeah, that's where my brain went when you asked the question, because I would consider myself a stoic in the traditional sense. I've also often been accused of that, and I don't know if some of that just came from reporting and the need to stay calm in certain situations, but a lot of it for me feels like a choice in like what energy that I'm going to feed. If I'm in a situation that's high strung, I can lean into that energy, or I can lean into the energy that I want to bring to the table, which is a calmer, more receptive energy. So, but I agree also in the description of strength being not how we traditionally define it, and I can lift weights and like all the things, and I'm so emotionally strong and tough and I can't feel anything and all. I think a big aspect of strength is being vulnerable and being willing to be vulnerable. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times in reporting, a lot of people are intimidated by reporters because, they think that I'm showing up to like catch them in something, or, they don't know how to talk or whatever. And often like I'll go in and the first thing I say is be like, hey, I'm kind of nervous. I got a little bit lost trying to get here. So like, coming into it very human breaks the ice. Mm-hmm. And I have never felt like that made me look weak just because I admitted that I'm nervous too, Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's a balance. I don't see them as the opposite end of the spectrum, or in like Tony said, in duality.
Yes, I love that. All right, so we have officially hit our hour mark. So if anyone needs to leave, please feel free to go. But I did have one last question that I wanted to present to all of you. Could a matrifocal culture help men? Seems like an easy answer to some of us, but maybe not to all of us. Now, I want to gently remind you guys that if a society places greater value on community and emotional intelligence and mentorship and belonging and care, would men suffer less? And expand. Expand on your answer. Whoever wants to go first.
Tony seems
Go ahead. And then we're like, what?
only one way to find out. That's the answer, because it's impossible to know. And I often use this phrase that if somebody claims to know big things like this, they're probably about to sell you a book or ask you for a fucking campaign donation. So I generally think that it's impossible to know these things. But from my own experience, like I started this conversation with, the times that I have felt genuine nourishment, support from a woman, it has put wind in my sails that I have not been able to find in any other corner of this beautiful place we call Earth. I do think that kind of energy, the matriarchal energy, the healthy mother, the supportive sister, like that energy is just unparalleled, man. And it's good to hear it from the homeboys too. I did say that you can't find it from the homeboys. You can't, but there's a type of support you can get from the homies that, you can't get from the ladies either. Maybe that's a conversation for a different day, but I would say I would lean towards yes to answer your question. I would lean towards yes, but I think that if Nostradamus were here today, he's probably going to charge you like $9.99 for his Patreon to hear the fucking answer of what's happening tomorrow. And that's the truth. Nobody knows the future. Nobody has the answer. But the best way we can learn what it is by showing one another that this works. And it's not always about friction and bumping up against people's ideals and ideologies. That seems more like toxic machismo, masculine bullshit. Challenging. You're wrong. I'm right. It's like this. And oftentimes it's like, let me do this. How do you feel now? How do you feel now that I'm in your presence, that these things have happened, that this has been done for you, or that this opportunity is here for you, or that I believe in you? How do you feel now? Because ultimately, as a human being, how we feel about it is oftentimes exponentially more important than what somebody tells us about it, or than what we can think or analyze or pragmatize about it, right? And so, to me, would it be healthier for men if we had a matrifocal society? Maybe, but let's find out. And to me, the best question we could ask is, what is the next best thing we could do? The next best thing. Not a series of things, not the scaffolding, not the structure, not the 10 tenets of achieving a matrifocal society by fucking some author. Fuck them. Show me today. What do we do right now?
That was going to be my next question to you, that I was going to just like spawn on you last second. But what do you think, and same will go to you, Cannon, as well, but what do you think men need most right now?
Purpose. And they need camaraderie. And they need something to believe in. And some people might not like this answer from me, but men, we love adventure. The idea of swearing fealty to a king, like if this was 600 years ago and I was supposed to swear fealty for a king and then go die for this motherfucker? What do you mean? But men did it. Why? Because they believed in the kingdom. They believed that it would keep their daughters safe, their communities safe, their way of life safe, at least in part. That's why nationalism tends to work. That's why like hometown pride still exists with your high school mascots and shit. Like something to believe in, some kind of identity, and it's been stripped from us. Everything's been corporatized. Everything's been sanitized, and it's very rare for me to meet a man with purpose in this day and age. But when I do, damn it, I have no further questions. Typically, if he's achieved it and he has a supportive network of people like around him, it's because he's attained he's attained tribal status. He's attained his dreams. He has the support of people who probably helped him build that dream. All of the other things fall in line when a man tends to have purpose. And sometimes it's dangerous. I mean, look at World War II. Look how crazy it can get when a man has purpose. Yeah. And men today are aimless. It's why there's too much time on the hub, too much time on the PlayStation, too much time drinking, too much time in the garage doing nothing. Like, they don't have anything to do, nothing to believe in. And a bunch of them left the church too. And they never replaced that divine thing with something else, even if it wasn't Yahweh or whatever the fuck people want to call it. Does that make sense? Like what we have, everything has been stripped from us. Our labor, our career, meaningful art, meaningful hobbies, togetherness, dart league, Lions Club, poker nights, just like all of the stuff that like used to keep us together and give us some grounding are gone or eroded, or some hollow paid subscription to experience something kind of like it. And the only place, here I go again, the only place to rebuild it is down the fucking street with the homeboys. Have an idea. Like, and this is where I'll end the plane. Is like, I know a guy who was in law enforcement for a long time, and he would have to do these calls to families where the kid was being removed and put into foster care, and all of their belongings would be tossed into a trash bag. That's what happens. Everything this kid owns goes into a trash bag. And he just couldn't stand to see this, and that this is the beginning of the next chapter of your life, is a fucking trash bag. And so he started a nonprofit that pools together the funds, and they buy suitcases and they just have them. So when these calls get made, a kid can leave that house and enter into whatever uncertain next chapter they're about to enter into with at least some dignity. He just decided to do it. Nobody told him. He didn't have to see a viral video about it. He saw it. It was a need, and he filled it. And now him and everyone else that he's working with, like, that fills your soul with something that you cannot buy, and you cannot read it out of a book. You can't learn about it from a podcast or a piece of content. You have to live it. And the only place you can live is where you are. And chances are you're in a community, you're in a neighborhood. And that like, it just over and over again, no matter what debate I'm having, it always funnels back down to like, what can we do right here? And I think men need purpose. We need more meaningful careers. We need better friend groups. And again, if a pretty lady tells us that we're doing a good job for whatever reason, that's like fucking, that is voodoo, man. That is like some Wingardium Leviosa shit. I can't explain it, but it works. Now I'll shut up.
What about you, Cannon? Do you think a matriarchal culture could help men?
So, I mean, obviously, yes. So I want to start by saying, like, this might be controversial, but I don't know that foundationally men and women need, like, I think we need the same thing. I don't know that we need these drastically different things. Now, I think the issue is because we're part of this patriarchal society, we have to focus on what's broken. And so that is what men are being told. But I think all of us as human beings, like we long for, I'm going to go back to creation and community. We want to build something that gives us purpose, and we want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And so it's about finding ways that we can do that. And I think part of the reason men have a hard time with that is that ways that we can create and belong in our current society have been gendered, have been labeled as feminine, as less than, as not having value. And because we see these videos of these manosphere guys being like, oh, these women are gonna die in their homes with their cats and their gardens and all these crafts that they've created. And it's like, well, that sounds pretty great. Like what? Like why is that such a problem? And so the issue isn't that, and I think that's kind of what we're all going for. Even if we bring in some of these more male dominated like hobbies, like the reason people get so sucked into video games is because it gives them a sense of accomplishment. It gives them a sense of we're building something. Now, there's a complicated layer to that, because that thing that they're building is how many people they've killed, even if it's virtually. Like it still has this underlying sense of violence and destruction. But like that's what we're going for. And so like I think starting with that, obviously we would benefit in a matriarchal society. I keep trying to not make like capitalist comparisons, but I'm going to do it this time.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a couple of thoughts, but because one, I was thinking about Mark Fisher's capitalist realism and how he talks about how we can imagine the end of the world more easily than we can imagine the end of capitalism. And I think that's the same thing when it comes to patriarchy and violence and hierarchy. We can imagine the end of the world much more easily than we can imagine an end of violence. And I think we have to start there. I think in order to start trying to achieve that, we have to at least be able to imagine it, at least be able to think that there could possibly be this world, even if we don't think we'll see it. And so building on that, the other connection that I was thinking about with capitalism is that part of the reason, these billionaires and even millionaires are resistant to paying taxes is because they are so convinced that, they don't want to lose any of that power, any of that money without realizing that if they pay their taxes, it'll benefit them as well. Like they might lose a little bit of that power that they have. They might come down a little bit in that perceived hierarchy, but they're going to benefit. Everybody benefits from having good infrastructure. Everybody benefits from having good public schools. And so if they would just be willing to pay into this, they would get something out of it. I think the same goes for men in matriarchal societies, that they're so worried about losing that status and that position in the hierarchy that they don't want to contribute. They don't want to be part of the community. And part of that is the misunderstanding of what matriarchy is. Part of that is men feeling like, well, matriarchy is where women treat men like men have been treating women for the last, 1,000 years. And that's not what it is. And so I think, if we're willing to lose a little bit of that perceived status, and I think that's where our imaginations come in. We have to be able to first imagine a world without violence, imagine a world without hierarchy. And then if I can imagine and think about it, then I'm not so worried about my own position in this hierarchy because I can see how it might be better if we take a different approach. And so, anyway, I thought of more metaphors, but I won't go into that. So, but yeah, I think we're just so scared of losing what little status we have that we reject this idea of matriarchy, even though it'd be so beneficial to all of us.
I want to speak
What
to
do
that
you
because
think
I'm
that men need
sensing-
most?
Sorry.
Sorry, Jules, go ahead.
I was sensing a theme in both the things that didn't get outright.
Oopsie, we lost her.
Somebody tried to call, spam call.
There we go.
Tony talked about purpose, and then Cannon talked about hierarchy, and the question started with a matrilineal focus versus patriarchy focus. And from the women's side of the fence, this patriarchal focus feels like your purpose has become succeeding in the eyes of men.
Mm-hmm.
We're over here, the manosphere and all of the things. It's all you're peacocking for men, and we're over here you're trying to mate with us, correct? Why are you trying? Is that shift in purpose being, and Tony talked about, you can get validation from women in the same way. So has your purpose been so centered on achieving in the eyes of men, looking like a man in the eyes of men, that you then can't get validation from? Is that where the sense of purpose gets lost?
Mm-hmm.
I think we philosophically are underdeveloped and undertrained. Damn it, quit giving me the big window.
Get over
The
it.
panel about ladies.
talk?
The panel about
I
the
don't like it either.
ladies. You don't want to see my
Not today's
peacocking
roundtable. It's
face.
about the men today.
All right, fine. It's that we ask very poor questions about the nature of reality, the purpose of our lives. And again, I do not blame a bunch of Gen Xers and millennials for leaving the church and for questioning faith and deconstructing all these things. Good. That is part of the spiritual awakening. But to not fill it with something that nourishes the soul in the same way, it has ramifications. Deep implications. about what we do with our energy, our time, our labor, what power structures look like, how things are distributed, the relationship between, person to their spouse or their children or their friend groups, or what we do with our elderly and our parents and how we take care of them. Our spiritual center, our thoughts on birth, death, and the things that happen in between and possibly before or after, who fucking knows? Again, anybody who claims to is probably about to sell you a book. It's like we are lost because we have no idea what it means to be an adventurer and to build something ourselves in this day and age. When you sit here and talk about liberty and individual sovereignty, people get confused, man. And that's scary. You can go out and build a life. It is challenging and difficult, but a lot of men and women, that we just don't see it. We don't see that the ability to build the life that we'd rather live is always right there. It's always right there. But the fear of loss, the fear of uncertainty and leaving the comfort zone, again, this is why the current capitalist system works. We can bitch about AI data centers all we want, but every single one of us is using them bytes right now.
Yeah.
Every single one of us is chewing on that bandwidth. Here we are.
Yeah.
That's why we're here, is because the way of life that we're living is supporting the very thing that we're trying to escape. And so in order to escape it, we have to build something different. And a lot of people don't know that it's possible to just go and do it right now. And I make it sound easy, and it's not, but it is simple. It is very simple. Men in particular, since that's who we're talking about today, they're lacking purpose because they don't know that they can just go design something new. Design your life, homie.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but what if it fails? You'll learn,
Right.
and then you'll be okay. As long as you don't die, you'll be okay, and you'll try again and try again until you find something that works, that doesn't eat your soul, that leaves you time and mental capacity to do the other things you love in life. But if we're stuck in these 9-to-5s, we're unquestioning about where we get our food, the subscriptions we pay for, the gas we put in our automobiles, and so on and so on. If we just blindly accept that this is all the way exactly that it is and will never change, then what purpose could you serve other than the one that you're stuck in right now? And so again, the guy who started the thing with the suitcases for kids. I know other people who decided to work for the mental health and addiction services locally. I know people who've done wonderful things, but they were always challenged to get there. And I don't know what that means, but but what I've seen over and over and over again is people making a conscious decision to not live this way anymore. And they have to cut their way through the thorns and the briars and stumble through the rocks and the mud to get there, because there is no path to where we're talking about. And this is where I'll land my plane. Cannon had mentioned something. Let's imagine a world without violence. Let's imagine a world without hierarchy. And I like that because I think it puts our hearts in the right place. But I think to sober that up and to ground it, I think what we're actually talking about is what kind of system, what does the system look like in the face of those things? Because sometimes it seems like humanity's thrown a curveball, and whether that's a dissenting out group who doesn't like the system you've created, that happens. It just happens throughout history. Maybe it's a byproduct of certain things that we could list off here. Colonialization and imperial forces, conquistadors and whatever, crusades. Sure, possibly. But I do also think that we need to be asking ourselves, what does this system look like right here, right now, in the face of everything that's going on? Because if we have to wait for peace, if we have to wait for a certain set of bullet points and criteria to be met before we can start to categorize our society like this, it'll never happen. Mm-hmm. It's like the musical artist who's like, I want the next album to be like this, and it's kind of like that, and it's like, imagine it's like this, and da-da-da. They're never making that album. It's never gonna happen. I've seen it a gazillion freaking times. But the person who just gets into the studio and starts playing and recording, they end up with an album every time.
Yeah. Right.
Every single time. Just press record. You know what I'm saying? So like, men's purpose comes from the philosophy of life. and I would generally say humans' purpose comes from the things we're taught about what it means to be human, where we come from, where we're going, what family means, what community means. Like religion and philosophy, and sometimes pop culture, science fiction stories and adventure stories, fantasy. Sometimes it can come from there too. I'm a Star Wars boy, so it can come from there too. But we don't have that as a current society. We're a bunch of godless sons of bitches, which is fine as long as we replace God with something that still nourishes our soul. Don't care what it is. Don't care what you call it. Don't care what corner of the planet or the galaxy it comes from. It means nothing to me as long as we're getting that spiritual food from somewhere, because then the purpose will be found. I believe that. I believe our purpose will be found if we're raised with the right philosophies and outlook on life and death and the universe as a whole. Now I'll shut up.
Correct. And I do agree. And I want to give Cannon his chance here to also answer this question as well, because I want to get a well-rounded opinion from men.
Okay, well, I'm
What
glad
do
you
men
said
need right now,
well-rounded
Cannon?
because I'm gonna go in a different direction. I think actually what men need is to quit looking for this purpose. I think that's actually part of the problem, is that we keep being told once you find your purpose, then everything will fall into place. And I think there's a few reasons for this. Like one, we've been given the same answer for decades. Growing up very conservative, evangelical, I was given Wild at Heart and all these books that told me that if I found my purpose, if I did A, B, and C, then I would be, and that just hasn't worked. And now what we're seeing is like these manosphere podcasters are repackaging this 1990s evangelical masculinity, and just reselling it in a different way. And the other part about that is that women have been given their purpose by society. They keep being told what their purpose is, which is to have babies and raise, be mothers. And the women that reject that are the happiest. And so why is it that we think that men just need to find that purpose and then they'll be happy? And so what I think, again, I'm just going to go back to what I think we all need. And I think our society allows women to do this more, because of the things that get gendered. But I think it's about enjoying the process. What we really need is to figure out how to be content in the moment. Because what we're told in our consumer culture is that like it's always about that next step. It's about like when you graduate high school, you're going to be happy. When you graduate college, you're going to be happy. When you get the kids and the wife, then you'll be happy. And we keep being told then. And I think what we need to do is we need to start telling people enjoy the moment, enjoy the process. I think I've been trying to play piano more these last like few weeks, and part of the thing that stops me from playing the piano is I hear my parents' comments to me when I was growing up playing. Neither of them could play the piano, neither of them could read music, but they had plenty of comments about what I was doing wrong. And they kept like what they instated in me was this idea that it's not enjoyable until it's perfect. It's not enjoyable until I reach that pinnacle. And what you find out is that pinnacle is not reachable because it keeps moving. So I figure out how to play this one piece, and that's good. But then I got to play something better. And so what I've had to retrain my brain to do is enjoy the process. Enjoy the fact that the more that I play, the easier it is to read the music. That the more I practice, even if I'm not perfect at some of the songs, I can turn to another song and I can sight read it much better. And so I see those little steps and those little moments, and I enjoy the process. If I just focused on the purpose, if I just focused on, I'm going to learn a song, I'm going to learn it beautifully, and then I'm going to use that song, to woo somebody and impress them, then I'm only happy when I reach that moment, which is probably never going to come, And so I think it's about changing our focus to, yeah, just enjoying those everyday steps and finding contentment. I think happiness can kind of be hard to reach. So finding contentment, I think in the everyday moments is the key.
Yeah, I love that. I love that response because it does differ from Tony's. And this is another wonderful example of how two truths can exist at once. Because for one person, that might be the main thing that they need to do because they feel like they've had none their whole life. For
Hmm.
someone else who's been told that they have a purpose their whole life and they still don't know what it is, then
Yeah.
maybe that's what they need to do, right? Is to take that step back, become the lone wolf for a little season, right? And really go inward and figure out, well, what do I want my purpose to be? Like
Hmm.
figuring it out that way as opposed to, this grand thing out there. But likewise, like what Tony was saying, I think that's also so super important as well, because if people are directionless, or as I say in this chat, I pull it from the Bible, so it's not my original idea, but people perish from a lack of vision. That's a bottom line. If people don't know where they're going, if they can't visualize it, if they can't figure out the right way to manifest it, then they're just going to wander around, analogy, in the desert for 40 years because there's no focal point. There's nothing for them to strive towards. So I think that both of those can be true at once. Jules,
Can I?
did you want to add to what you think possibly that men need right now?
I mean,
From
bringing
a
it
woman's
back
perspective,
to
sorry.
bringing it back to the fact that we wanted this conversation to start because it is Men's Mental Health Month, and marrying that with all of the subject matter that we've been talking about for the past few weeks. I strongly feel like this patriarchal centered society has almost disconnected men from being emotional and being in touch with emotions and really even just considering them. And when we talk about the unaliving rates and how that seems to be the big block there seems to be their inability to reach out and ask for help. And I think that's where I wanted to bring it back to, like, the matriarchal centered. We've talked about how it's not dominant in the terms of like the patriarchy is, and it's more a round table centered discussion like this. I think about that quote of, was it Desmond Tutu? We've got to stop pulling people out of the river and go upstream and figure out why they're falling in. I feel like getting back to that village mentality where we're all, tuned into each other and notice when, like if we're all in a village and I am paying attention to Tony and I'm paying attention to Cannon and I know who they are as people and who they identify as, then I'm going to notice when they slip off, a little bit and start to become unlike themselves, and we're going to rally around them. And I think we've lost that in the patriarchal system. And even like in terms, when we got into that conversation about protection, men, it's the testosterone and the aggression and the violence and all of that. They immediately jump to physical protection when a lot of what women have been asking for a really long time is emotional protection of our psyche. Tony was talking about like the farm girls and shit. Like I was one of those. My gun's the same size as yours. I'm not the girl that you're going to leave in the room to go check the noise because that's tactically stupid. It's 2 against 1. But, when my feelings get hurt, when I walk out the door, that's the protection we need in this society. Right. We've gotten away from a lot of that physicality.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Terry. Welcome to the conversation, my dear. Did you have a question or a comment you wanted to add? Oh, I think you're still muted.
Hi, thank you for having me. I love this conversation. I wanted to, I love that these two gentlemen, as you say, two truths can be held at the same time, and both of their points of view are very, very valid. I'm a grandma of 8, okay, and I have 4 grandsons and 4 granddaughters. And the one thing that I have learned that I've observed from raising my daughter and is that I think when we were fighting for women's rights and that women's movement in the 60s and the 70s, under a patriarchal society, we left our men behind instead of educating them and bringing them into the movement, and saying, this is where we need you and our support. But I always say you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Is this conversation being had too late? No, I just believe that sometimes we get to a turning point and these issues have to be addressed. And I think that's where we're at now. And while I do think that, we're moving towards more of a I can't say the word, but you know what I'm saying. But
Matriarchal.
I think matriarchal, yes, society. I think it's a nice way to go ahead and bring our men along with us, supporting us on our needs. Like Mad was saying, I love the idea with yeah, I'll go with you because it's 2 against 1. But when I'm out there walking in the street, and I'm going to a restaurant by myself and there's a man or a group of men there, this is where I tell men, this is where women need you. Okay. When we're out in public, if you are going out for a night on the town with your buddies and that there's this one guy in the group. I mean, because women all know another woman who has been violated, essayed and approached and disrespected everywhere, right? But men will never say that they know a man who behaves this way. And in reality, they do. They just don't want to call them out. So we need men when we go into public spaces. When they go into public spaces, they know who the guy is. Call them out. Listen, we want to go out. We want to have a good time, but I'm not going to tolerate you behaving this way with strangers or specifically women. And that nudge will make all the difference in the world, I believe anyway. But I think that's how we're going to slowly get where we need to be, where they're walking side by side and actually hearing us. I don't need you to protect me while I'm at home. I need you, a total stranger who sees a man coming up to me in my space and violating it, saying that's not cool. That is the most important thing, because why should we teach women how to defend themselves when that's what men want to do anyway?
I 100% agree with that. I'm living proof of that, or was in my reporting career, because I was predominantly a crime reporter, and so you have to go into these very male dominated spaces, law enforcement, things like that. It takes a long time to gain a certain kind of respect in those spaces where they'll take you seriously. And a lot of how I got to that place was along the way, men in that space recognizing that I knew my stuff and coming in and saying, you fuck with her, you fuck with me. And opening doors for me that I wouldn't have been able to open myself as a woman,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this discussion. Hi, Chris. Welcome. Do you have
I love
question
this
or comment?
I do. My lady actually sent me this live, and it's interesting. I think this is a zeitgeist where a lot of our worlds, it needs to be headed. There's a lot that's made in the male-female dynamic of the sexual intimate connection. And the way I like to put it is that if we look at the other areas where we're connected in the species genders, the fathers to daughters and the mothers to sons and the brothers and sisters, if those voices and those kinds of ethos were supposed to get as much attention in our social sphere as the intimate sexual connection, I think a good deal of the rift that happens between men and women can be solved. We forget at times the various other connections that we have and the respect and the love and the care that's there. And it just seems as if the sexual connection is being the main focal point where a lot of the issues surrounding our gender, the interconnectivity of it, is what's playing from that dynamic. And, I can listen to women speak about it and speak about these things like you guys were talking about. We can be allies with each other. We don't necessarily have to have these dynamics like, oh, this is the male space, this is the female space. We live in this world together. And it really is I started a men's circle recently in Toronto. It's been going for 9 months. And the whole point of that is to have men come back into connection with themselves, because there's a lot of disconnection with the conception of men they should be in this world versus, the images that's put forward towards what we're going after versus what we truly should be furnishing. And, I thought the space was necessary to bring community, bring connection, help with the isolation, that particular epidemic. But we've had a couple of instances where like my lady came into the circle and she spoke about things from the feminine perspective, and it's amazing the congruence and the commonality that's there, but it's almost as if there's a disconnect where we don't, for whatever reason we've been acculturated, we don't allow for those moments to happen because everyone has their egotistical back up against their walls based on what's happened in the past. We're like, okay, stuff's happened in the past. Everyone's got some degree of ownership of it, but we can't seem to get past that aspect before we're truly coming to the table where we put our swords down, we put our shields down, like, okay, let's talk about this. How can we figure this out? And just seeing you guys, the men up here and the women up here, this wonderful synergistic back and forth, this desire to come to solutions, it's absolutely needed. We need more of these spaces. So kudos for you guys for in your way creating that space, because the more exposure, especially young people, because the young people of today, I was born in late 79. So I grew up in a time where we were just coming into the internet age and we had one foot in the past and we had one foot in the future. But these young people, let's say like a young mid 20s, they don't have any frame of reference. All they've known about is the digital world. So the information they're acting from is not really useful. And we need to like hold their hands a little bit more by being the examples that we're professing, that we're espousing right now. So I think bottom line is it comes down to trust. It comes down to like, if we look at the past, there's a lot of crap that happens in the past that people, if they hold on to it, we can't get past to get anywhere meaningful in the future because of all the shit that's happened. And it's almost as if we have to be naive when it comes to the trust. Like, okay, we're in a different phase right now. We know where we're going. We understand what's happened in the past. Let's see if we can make this happen. And instead of everyone getting so bogged down in their own self-interest and in their own egos, because it's like two wheels in the bike. If one of the wheels are busted, that bike is not going anywhere, right? So the more we come into this idea, we need each other, period. There's no way that this species is going anywhere unless man and woman is going together. We need to get that through our heads over and over. And I think I'll keep stressing this. The sexual connection of this species is getting in the way of the other connections, right? If we listen to the fathers of daughters and the mothers of sons and the brothers and sisters, and those voices have as much room as the ones who have with the crap that's happening with men and women, the enmity of it, you will find that the pie chart will just take care of itself, that a perspective will be gotten from that is far more healthier and far more truer than what social media and what our celebrity culture is espousing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Preach.
So can I respond?
Yes.
Yes. Cannon
Okay.
first and Tony.
So I really like that. And to me, to me, what I went to again was about purpose, was about needing to let go of this idea of purpose, because I think the reason, like, we men have been told that these heteronormative relationships with women, the purpose of them is that sexual connection. And so sometimes it's about, sometimes we're told that it's about connecting with as many women as possible. Sometimes it's about, getting that one and then, controlling them. And if we would let go, the irony is, if we let go of that purpose, we would probably get that connection more often. That if that wasn't the only goal, if that wasn't our only purpose, we would benefit. So again and again, I think it comes back to men are so scared of losing their position in that hierarchy. They're so convinced that if they are equal to those around them, if they start a more communal existence, that they're not going to get all these things. They're not going to be able to get this purpose.
That's right.
But if they would do that, if they would let go of that focus and be more communal,
that's the misconception. That's what you're saying right there. That's the misconception that has been given this machine world. If you look at it, it's in the advertising, it's in the movie tropes, it's in the narratives. It's not just that we're just happenstance by playing it out. We have played the role of what we think we should be based on years and decades of programming and conditioning. And it's really tough, especially for these young guys, because they don't have a frame of reference. You put like some kind of video before them, you put like a guy up on a certain kind of pedestal, he has certain kind of mannerisms, he has a certain kind of way of being. They look to mimic that because they think of what's been fed by them. This is the position of strength. This is a position of power. And then the alternatives gets shunned. It gets treated as if it's this kind of wimpy, wussy kind of idea of being man. And it's this comparison, this this really, the image of manhood that's out there needs to be sincerely reconsidered. And that's what we're fighting against in some ways, right? It's just, where is this information coming from? Where is this idea of either being a man or being a woman coming from? It has to come from us internally, our very core, our entire existence being a biological organism, coming into it with a history and tradition and all the genetics that we have enough wherewithal to really make this change. But when you're going up against that big bad machine idea of like what manhood should be, where women should be, or how we should be in relation to each other, that's where we're knocking heads. And especially for the younger generation, because they don't have any frame of reference, they're going to go with it. And then sometimes they got so much investment, they get caught up with a certain image, and they realize this is a false image. They haven't done any work to take care of their own inner constitution. And that's what I'm noticing from the men's circle, just by having this space, that when we meet and we speak together and we're able to flesh our inner thoughts and our inner feelings out and then use each other as a reflective surface, we get to see like, holy shit, what I'm thinking is actual bullshit. What I'm actually going after is something that's not going to bring me the fruits that I think it would. But unless they have that space, because whether or not we choose to admit it, we're living in this atomized reality, everyone in this hyper independence, and it's killing us from within because we're social creatures. We're meant to learn and gain from each other. But we got so caught up in the idea of hyper independence. And like, let's say that the conception of man, that you have to be on it. You got to be well to do. You got to make sure you get your goals. You have to accomplish. You have to position yourself like this guy who's able to take on every single challenge. And it's the upkeep of that image, because if you don't have that image, sometimes you look as if you're not, you're not capable or you're not competent. And it's this constant reconciliation, this really entrenched egoic way of being that we need to reconcile. And the only way we can reconcile it, be like, hey, you have an alternative over here. You can still be a man, but you can still do things for the greater whole, which includes the women and the kids, that you don't have to operate from this idea of manliness that's been given to us. And that's what we need in some ways to challenge. And I love it. And the more we have these spaces, the more people see that men and women can talk to each other, get along, work together, come to solutions, that any kind of noise on the outside, what you have with the social media, with the level of enmity, it's disgusting. I can't see it, especially as the father of a daughter. I'm looking at this like, oh my God, this just seems like a Black Mirror episode meets Beavis and Butthead. So it's just, it's starting. I think it's an internal work. It's an inside job first and foremost. And then once our focus could be on there, we will go out into the world. That will happen naturally when you're connected with the world. But the kind of being you're going to bring into the situation and circumstances and people you're with is going to be far more uplifting, far more productive, far more constructive for the species than what's happening right now with this. Everyone's walking around with their own reality TV shows and they have egos like they're their own celebrity, right? And so it's coming back to being together. That's really what it is, like truly being together,
Yeah. And I want to add, because I had a comment down here, someone had said the ego is your enemy or something along those lines. The ego is not your friend. And I want to just clarify real quick. The ego is neutral. The ego is absolutely neutral.
That's right.
You are the one choosing how to use it.
Exactly.
Either the ego is driving you and it's making you make your choices, your daily life decisions about what you're going to do or not do. It's either doing it subconsciously or it's doing it consciously.
That's right.
And that's a matter for you personally to make that choice.
Yes.
Again, no one else can make that choice for you, but you can choose to use your ego instead of having your ego use you. So I just wanted to clarify that. It's not a bad thing to have an ego at all.
Well, that's exactly, but because of how we're playing it, we've overdone the ego. The ego is meant to be a servant. We don't have to get rid of our egos. We have to integrate our egos. We have to make friends with our egos. We have to honor our ego. And as long as that's being done, then it doesn't seem like it's some kind of outsider that has his own motivation. Because when it works that way, it works against us, so it's ego is a friend. But if we allow the ego to run the show instead of being like, hey, buddy, you got to go into the back seat right now. That's how we come into play. We're the ones to regulate it. We're not just some kind of like, a happenstance human being that the world should upon. We're a sentient creature. We have free will. We have agency. We have power. And we need to act from that instead of allowing these external things, be it the ego, be it the culture, to then have like the predominant thing to make us make our choices. You know what I mean? We have to take ownership. That's what it comes down to. Yeah.
Yes. I love it. Guys, this conversation today has been amazing. We're almost at a 2-hour mark. I do have to get going, so I think that we're gonna do our final last minute comments, something I learned from Tony's lives a couple of years back.
Can I say something?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So I'm a homicide trauma survivor. Okay. My name is Terry, and I'm a homicide trauma survivor. Okay. And I spent the last 4 years actually doing the shadow work of looking at my trauma. And I came to the conclusion that my ego, as I looked at myself in triggered states, and my trauma were my worst enemy. And I never looked at my ego as being like you described it to me, because in my triggered states, my ego worked against me all the time, all day long. At least that's how I identified it. I identified it as my ego and not my trauma. And so as I've taken the time to be still, and this was mentioned a few times before about just enjoying the moment, when Cannon was talking about playing the piano and the commentary he was getting from his parents really struck me, because when you are being still, you just, and in a moment, you get better and you get better and you get better with that slowdown. And so I love the adjustment of how I'm now going to view my ego if and when I do become triggered. I spent a long time working on this. I'm really proud of the work that I've done. I'm building a community out here of homicide survivors, and we're using our voices to come to terms and banish the shame that we've lived under for so long, because every homicide event comes with a story that brings us shame, and so I am going to carry that information back about the ego, because in our experience, our ego, it's our worst enemy. It is the thing that dominates us and rules us. At least that's how I viewed it. And that's, so I just want to say thank you for that. And this was really, really such a great live. I'm glad I caught it. Thank you, Wild Woman. I love your stuff. And I followed everybody who was on the panel. But thank you. I appreciate you.
Yes, thank you for being here. We appreciate your voice too. All right. Any last thoughts from anybody? Go ahead, Tony.
I had to take notes. You guys were saying too much good shit too quickly, and then I was starting to lose track of what I wanted to say. Ego. It's crazy to me when I hear people talk about ego. Most of the things we describe as a toxic ego or being egotistical, it just comes from a lack of self-control with impulses. Think about what an impulse is, where it comes from, and the way it makes you feel in the moment. And acting on that impulse shows that we don't have a high enough level of self-awareness to pause before acting on that impulse.
Well said.
Whether that's an addiction, or whatever it might be.
Yes.
And I will go back to men's take on women in this modern age. It took me a long time to deconstruct my sexuality. And it was not a surprise, but equally horrifying to learn, who was behind Victoria's Secret and why since the age of 13 and 14, I'd walk through the mall and I've been lusting after curves and collarbones ever since. It took me a long time to deconstruct those impulses. It was hard for me to have platonic relationships with women because it was just the energy I was embodying. It was everywhere around me. Spring Break on MTV, Victoria's Secret advertisements in the mall, the J.C. Penney catalog that came to our house every month or whenever that came. It was everywhere, right? And so that took a long, long time. And then, of course, to find out who was behind Victoria's Secret, it should come as no surprise. The other thing I wanted to say about that is looking at someone as their inner child saved my life. Looking at a human being, even though they might be in a 57-year-old's body, is to really try to remember that was once a 6-year-old with a wild imagination, hopes and dreams, and a level of whimsy they've probably forgotten that they ever had. And I love to look at people like that because it dispels all of the political bullshit. It dispels the sexual tensions or confusions about things. It just dispels so much because now I'm looking at them in the purest sense, right?
That's
that was how I deconstructed my sexuality. And since I've done that, I have amazing platonic relationships with women that I wouldn't trade for anything, even if I think they've got a great body. And maybe once upon a time I did look at them with lust in my heart. Damn it, damn my programming, and I'll still fight it probably till the day I die. But I still respect them as individuals, as human beings now. And it's so much easier for me to have a platonic relationship when I look at them through the purest eyes that I can muster. The last thing I'll say is Chris had brought up the younger generations not having that foot, one in the analog world and one in the digital world. I was born in 85, so I'm in that camp with you. This is best illustrated to me for us older, middle-aged folks now. Feels super weird to call us that, but I guess that's what we are.
Middle-aged, man. Come on.
If I make it to 80, it'll be a damn miracle. Okay, I was a touring musician for 20 years. I was not kind to my body. 80 will be a fucking miracle. Okay, so in that regard, we're at halftime.
Fair.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? When I first heard the younger Gen Z kids talking about third spaces, I almost lost my goddamn, I do lose my goddamn mind every single time. I'm like, explain to me what a third space is. Like, well, a space that you don't have to pay money to be in and there's no expectations. You can just, I'm like, you mean a place to hang out? Like we have an academic term for hanging out now? What the fuck?
Could you imagine?
What the fuck are we
Like
doing?
a house party?
Yeah, exactly.
That's how disconnected they are.
Yeah.
We have an academic term for a place to go fucking hang out. Wow. And that's indicative of where we're at when it comes to localism, community building, having a village around you. And it's no wonder that people are feeling purposeless. They're feeling like romantic relationships are lost, hobbies are dying. And the only remedy I truly see to any of this stuff is just getting to know your neighbor. And someone was asking in the comments before about feminism versus matriarchy and all these isms and archies. And it confuses people a lot. So I'll clarify here, and maybe this will help someone else in the live, as I avoid all that stuff because a lot of them make a lot of big promises that they've yet to cash the check on.
Yes. Well said.
Communism, capitalism, feminism, matriarchy, like they've all got these great promises, and I've yet to see any of those checks cashed. But what I do see cashed is when real humans get out in real neighborhoods and help other real people and have receipts of those results, because you can change people's lives directly today. You don't need a politician. You don't need a university professor. You don't need the next book or the next great, you just go be a helper. That's what materializes everything that we're talking about. And I'll clarify too, one thing is, I think Cannon and I's opinions earlier were sort of the same when it came to purpose. It's like the quest for the purpose will kill you and you'll be endlessly lost in the weeds. It's not tangible. It's not attainable.
Right.
But it is discoverable, and it typically happens late night around a table having a conversation with somebody. Exactly. You'll discover your life purpose at the bottom of a bag of chips or a case of beer, whatever your flavor of hanging out with your friends is. You'll find it there. And late night conversations, being open, being vulnerable, questioning things, that's where the revolution happens. That's where consumer habits change. That's where men's habits change and our outlook changes. It's where women change. It's where everything changes, is in spaces of communication, big ideas, and open minds. And then the most important part is the follow through, to act on those. Again, as a musician, I've been in a lot of smoky rooms with a lot of brilliant artists and thinkers. But that's where the ideas die too, is in that smoky room. Nothing ever materializes out of these great philosophical late night stony conversations. And it's like being a helper and getting involved in community and finding where you fit in, even if it's just providing suitcases for foster kids so they can leave their toxic home with dignity. That is a part of what we're talking about, because you wanted to make the change. So you did. And so I think what a lot of us are running up against in this conversation of societal change is you got to get people to want to.
Yes.
Yep.
And using semantics and elite and credentialed university language isn't helping.
Absolutely.
So I typically don't talk about matriarchy or communism or socialism or minarchism. I don't like any of that shit because it feels exclusionary. It becomes pedantic and semantic, and I do not like it at all. And it does not help people understand what it is that we're talking about, which is you have to want to make the change, and you already possess the power to do so, but it's going to come through strength in numbers. And the numbers you need are probably living down the fucking street from you. You just don't know them yet. Or you think their political views or whatever other views are so wildly different that there's no world where you could start to brick by brick make a better community for both of you to live in. And if that ain't politics, I don't know what is. And now I'll officially shut up for the rest of the time.
I want to
You
be
gotta
your
quit
friend.
saying that.
Maybe you can be a spokesperson. Jeez, you lay that out with such eloquence. Well done, brother. Well done. And if I just want to add my little piece on top of that, community is essential. Exactly what you said. We're not going to be able to meet each other to speak about things if we're not meeting each other. And what you stated with all the isms, even before you get to the table, those are the hurdles you got to jump past. And you take a look at these things sometimes, like how meaningful are they in our everyday lives? And we hold true to these uniforms, these identities that we think that we are, that we don't even allow ourselves to meet each other on a humanistic level, on a very like whoever's underneath that uniform. So I will finish with this. Community is essential, irrespective of what the particular goal is. When we're working together, when our minds are locked together and we feel as if we're not alone and isolated, it is absolutely crucial to making moves that are constructive. And when it comes to the male-female dynamic, I'll go back again. Like you said, when you think about that adult, think about them being a child. When you think about women or men, think about your sons, think about your daughters, think about your brothers and sisters. The sexual part of it is not going to go anywhere because that's so hardwired within our system. It's not going to be reduced. But what's been happening, we live in this over pornified world for such a long time that sexuality has been hypersexualized. It's all over the place. And even before we get to talk to each other as human beings, it's almost we have to get past that whole, is there any kind of agenda? Is there something else that's happening here? And that's the kind of bullshit that gets in the way, that does not allow us to go to the table, sit down, talk with each other, and see what construction can come as a result. So I love everything he had to say, and that's what I have to say. And I appreciate you guys for bringing me up today. You're lovely people. I've followed every single one of you, and I look forward to the next time being with you.
Thank you, Chris.
I'm glad we spoke to the labels, because it is getting to a place, right, where it feels like people are trying to check off these boxes, right, before they decide that you are worthy of their time and attention. Regardless of what you're saying, regardless of whether or not it makes any sense, they want to make sure that like you're one of the good ones before you can join the conversation. And what we're trying to get back to, with everybody being a part of the table, somebody might have a completely different worldview than you. You might disagree with like 90% of the stuff that they have to think. But that also means that their brain is formed in a different way to see things in a different way than you do. And at some point, they might bring something up at the table that you never would have thought of. And that has value. We all have value in that way. And we bond through storytelling and through getting to know. So like, focus on what somebody has to say and the content of their character before you worry about what labels you've got to check off to make sure that they're a good human being.
Absolutely agree. What about you, Ken? Any last words?
Yeah, and I'll be real quick. So I Tony jumped off, but I agreed with him that a lot of what we're talking about here is semantics. Like I think what he's calling purpose, I'm calling contentment. And so I think it's important to allow, people to enter where they are. And so some people are going to be able to enter the conversation with this idea of we're rejecting purpose and we're finding, we're finding that contentment in our everyday existence, while other people, need that purpose. The last thing I was thinking is, and this is going directly opposite of what Tony was saying as well, because I'm gonna quote an academic and a philosopher. So in The Will to Change by Bell Hooks, she describes our society as imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy. And so we thought we were dealing with those first two issues for a while, and then we've realized in the last 10 years, oh, we actually haven't. We haven't been reconciling the imperialism and white supremacy as much as we told ourselves, we are. And so her argument comes down to, in order to fix those first three things, we have to fix patriarchy. And so we've kept trying to look at the symptoms and try to treat those, when the reality of it is we need to look at the root problem, which is our patriarchal society. And I think that once we start doing that, that's how we're going to create real change.
I do agree. Thank you so much for joining us today, Cannon. Appreciate all your input.
Thanks for letting me on. I was really excited to jump on. So
yeah, awesome.
Cannon and I are both from West Texas. We've met up on Dive Bar down the road.
See, it makes a lot more sense now.
I'm in East Texas now, but yes, that is.
I know you left me.
I know. So.
Well, I just want to let everybody know that just to remind you, we do this every other Friday. So we won't be meeting next Friday, but we will the following Friday. We have a few more topics that we do definitely want to address in this matriarchy, natural order conversation that we've been having. I appreciate each and every one of you coming up and sharing all of your input, because it's all important. And appreciated all around, everybody. Thank you so much. This video will be available on my YouTube, the full thing, knock on wood, as soon as possible. So just check back. It's the same screen name, @Mojavean_Wolf. All of our other previous ones we've done so far are also there as well to check out. So once more, thank you again. Thank you, everybody. And I hope everyone has a great weekend.